Before we get the show started, I have to give a huge shout out to some of my favorite people. I like to call them my Patreon podcast producers. They're showing major love to this show, and I want to show some major love for them. Daryl at Your Level Fitness, Kaitlyn at Kaitlyn Elise, that's 3 Y's in her name, folks. Crystal at Reduced Fat Mama, Joey at Joey Losing Weight, and Vanessa at Vanessa Ray's Journey. Can't thank these guys enough for their support, showing love on the Patreon. Go ahead and follow them on Instagram. They're all there. And if you want to join this special group, listen at the end of the show for more details. Are you Team Apple? I got to shout out all of you checking out this show right now on an iPhone, iPad, etc. In fact, nearly 70% of you are listening to me on one of these devices. It would mean the world to me if you took a moment to leave a review. This is one of the best things that you can do for this podcast to help get the word out. And while you're at it, leave reviews for some of your other favorite shows. I bet they would really dig it. Oh, yeah! Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Isn't it weird or fun when complete strangers just jump on a call randomly and it's like, yo, what's up? First time talking. Hey.
I love it. I think that's probably one of my favorite things.
You know, the old me, introverted Gary, which I'm still very introverted to a certain degree. You tried telling me a few years ago, you're just going to call up people you've never, I mean, we talk on Instagram, obviously, but I mean, like jumping on a phone. And it's kind of weird. Like nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of people that don't even like the art of jumping on the phone call. Like everybody's like text, DM, and I get it. And I find it kind of interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as far as like, you know, where it's kind of heading, because nowadays a lot of communication is done text based and, you know, people don't just call each other anymore. I feel like.
I know it's really actually so funny that you are asking me about that, because I have such a high degree of phone anxiety.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Where do you think that comes from?
I have no idea. I get super nervous, like calling anybody. And then if I call and they don't answer, I immediately think that A, they hate me, or B, they're dead. there's no middle ground there.
There's two extremes there, but
oh my gosh, it's awful. But, and it's hard because, I mean, especially in a professional setting, you really do have to be able to communicate over the phone. But with my job and what I do, we help a lot of like younger families. Yeah. So they'll text me, which is amazing. And I'm like, oh, this is not how it was supposed to be. But when you find a good person to talk to and you can have a conversation over the phone, I think that speaks volumes.
Oh, definitely. So. But I think here's the big question of like, does that anxiety come with our climate today, or was that you all the time, like before texting and all that was a thing?
Oh, that was me all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Even when I was younger. Yeah. When I would call, I would be so afraid, like, not so much like they hate me or they're dead thing, but if like one of their parents answer their phone.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why. Like I'm a pretty easygoing, likable person, but for whatever reason, and I have the same like weird thing with doors.
Really?
Like, I don't like to knock on doors. And I don't I know I sound crazy.
No,
so
I get it.
Welcome to the podcast, but like especially if it's a door that doesn't have a window, like I can't see through it, I get anxiety about like walking through it. So my very best friend from like grade school, we met when we were in the 4th grade and we're still best friends today. Like growing up, when I first got my license and I would drive to her house,
right,
I would have to call her on my phone and say, hey, I'm here. Can you open your door?
Yeah. That's
like,
I can relate with that. Or like I'll knock on a door, but number one, the anxiety level raises as you go from the car to the door. And then from there, it's like when you knock, it's not even like an audible knock. It's like a very light knock. And it's just like, you know, I even my parents' house, I do that. And it's so freaking weird.
And it's awful. Like I'll start so I don't default to the knock. I default to the doorbell.
Yeah.
And especially again with my job, if I go to somebody's house, it's because they've called me and they know that I'm coming. So I ring the doorbell, but they don't answer the door. I'm like, oh dear God, what do we do?
Oh, I text mom when I'm like around the corner. That's how weird I am. Like here's the thing. I have a key, Amanda. Like I could literally walk in that home anytime I want to. I don't even use the key. It's not even on my key ring. It's sitting on an old rusted key ring that's sitting in my house in an old pair of pants pockets somewhere. I don't even touch that key. I text her like a block or two away. Hey, I'm getting ready to pull up. And then she opens the door. I don't even have to knock a lot of the time. She just opens the door when I get up there and she just lets me in. It's so weird.
It is the weirdest thing.
And then
that makes me feel a little better about myself though.
we all have similarities. We just don't know it yet. You know what I mean? That's why we jump on phone calls like this or Skype calls and we just start chatting because who knows what the conversation will bring. I could remember as a teenager, you know, the first time I called a girl, like that was like nerve-wracking. Are you kidding me? Like, gosh. You know, I'm in high school, right? And that's how late it was for me. I'm in high school. The girl writes the number down on the little white piece of paper with with the lines on it and the 3-hole punch, right? And it's got like little hearts or whatever. It's some pink gel pen or
sparkly gel pen.
It's all folded up, right? And so like the nerves. The moment I get that piece of paper, it's like, hey, you know, call me anytime or whatever. And you know, putting that in the pocket, getting on the school bus, going home. And then of course, like, you know, the mindset is like, I got to call. Like, of course, like she wants me to call. So I call.
I love that.
And it's the most nerve-wracking thing ever.
Oh my gosh, that's adorable. I love that story. You should tell that story every week. That's the greatest.
Well, you know, if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know I do tend to repeat myself many times.
That is true. That is true. That's all right, though.
I haven't got any complaints yet, but you know what? I have a theory about it, Amanda, and here's the theory on it. It's because every time I talk to somebody, generally it's the first time we're talking. And so as we're like kind of figuring each other out, stories come out. And then like, you know, a lot of times I've had people where they've shared like one of those fast food stories about on the way home or something. And it's like, well, of course, I don't want to be like rude. I want to share something, you know, they just shared something with me. I want to share something with them. And it's like, well, that naturally, that's my go-to story. So then that's where the McDonald's order that's been repeated 87 times comes into play, you know?
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, I know you've heard a couple of these things. So you kind of know how the vibe is and how we do it. And I'm just, you know, like I'm sitting here like trying to think back. Like I know we've been in contact for a little while now. Do you remember, you know, how we discovered one another on Instagram?
Yes, I started following you back when I used to follow Lexi at Fat Girl Fed Up.
Okay.
And I remember she'd posted about meeting up with you, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and recording a podcast. And I was like, well, I should probably listen to that. And then I kind of, you know, dove into the wormhole. Like your podcast was the very first podcast I ever listened to.
Get out.
Swear to God. I'd never even thought of listening to a podcast until I found out that Lexi and Danny were going to be on yours. And I was like, well, I should probably listen to that.
Ladies and gentlemen that are listening, I've been in podcasting for 12 years, and comments like that are why I keep going. Thank you. Wow. Seriously, like that blows me away. Like, you know, I get that once in a while. It's like, hey, this is the first podcast I've ever listened to. Or people, they see a post and they're like, oh, how do I listen to that? I've never listened to a podcast before. And like, I guess like myself or somebody like Daryl or a Willie Gillis or somebody like that, like we're such in a bubble that like, we just think like podcasts, they're so easy to come by. Like everybody should know about them by now, but there's still a lot of people out there that they haven't dove in yet.
Right.
And it's it's a hard concept to grasp. But when I hear that, I'm like, wow, okay, wow, this is cool. And I knew that, when I had them on, it was going to potentially bring some new people in. So I'm glad that you took a chance and checked it out.
Yeah. It was just one of those things. I just didn't know how to do podcasting.
Right.
I think in my mind, I envisioned that it was like a show. And if you weren't listening from the beginning, then forget it. There's no point. And I was like, well, I'm going to try it. And then it was through your podcast that I found, obviously, Daryl's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And because of starting to use the Apple podcast, I was able to start listening to Amanda Valentine's podcast, which is a whole other story, because I've known of Amanda Valentine because we used to live in the same town in New York together. So I've known of her. I was friends with her on Facebook forever, but I didn't actually start listening to her podcast until you got me started on listening to podcasts. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's crazy that you guys had like a connection years ago.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. And I actually just got to meet her in person for the first time this summer. And it was like one of those like idol moments. And it sounds so weird because she so much is just a regular person, but oh my gosh.
But such a rock star.
Oh God, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Absolutely has crushed everything. I mean, radio,
she's
health.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When we had that podcast, I was like, okay, this is a radio person. And I'm like very, very nervous. And I get nervous in general, just talking to anybody that I've never spoken to before. And knowing that she's kind of in that radio world, and that's the world I've always kind of wanted to be in. I mean, I've been at this for 12 years now, and I used to do live radio just online. And so, the radio people have this mentality, or a lot of them do, as we talked about in that podcast, of like, the podcasters, the internet radio people, they're kind of like the scum of the earth. And like, what do they know? Because, podcasting years ago was just kind of this thing that was thought of as like a joke for the longest time. Like, radio people were like, that's nothing. Like, what's that going to do? Because in radio, if you're like some big FM DJ in like a top 10 market or whatever, like you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year once you get to a certain level. Now, there are a lot of people that are very entry level. They come in, they're not making anything, and you work your way up to that. But once you get up there, and that's usually the people that are kind of talking the trash, is like the big time guys, because they have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect. And it's like, they try to be the gatekeeper, and the podcast just got to be so loud and so noisy that it just started taking over and disrupting the space of people's attentions. And now with things like Anchor, where you can just pop on your phone and now you're a podcaster. If I had that years ago, I couldn't imagine.
Yep. It's insane. It's just insane watching everything change.
Oh, it's wild. I mean, I just in 12 years, like where it started, and like podcasting was so hard because if you had like, like an iPod, which a lot of people had, because when it came out in like, I want to say 03, 04, somewhere in there, it became like a huge thing. Everybody had to have one because all your music was sitting on this little thing that fit in your pocket. But in order to get podcasts, it was just as difficult as putting music on, because you had to, number one, you had to download it, but then you had to plug it in. We didn't have the Wi-Fi syncing and the cellular data at that time. You had to plug it into your computer and wait for it to download, then transfer to your device. And it got to be a little tricky at first. And so there was quite a great barrier to entry in the early days. And plus, not everybody had high speed internet 12 years ago. People, I had a Verizon DSL line 12 years ago. And the only way I was able to do any kind of radio or podcasting was using a website called Blog Talk Radio, where you literally called in with your phone to this website that like transferred your voice at very low quality. And they pushed it, and they're still around, by the way. You could look up Blog Talk, and the thing that was the attraction to it was that they had live phone calls. And so they would give you a toll-free number and you would call this number. And so once you called the number, you set up a time, and like 5 minutes before you call in, it says, okay, 3, 2, 1, you're live. And then so from whatever time you set up, you were live on the air. And then you had another phone number where people could call in. You had a little switchboard that loaded up, and you could take phone calls, and you had a chat room. It was the wildest thing 12 years ago. Believe me.
Cool. That's so cool. So here's a random question. So did the term podcast come from iPod?
I believe it did. I don't know that to be a fact, but I feel like it was originated from, the Apple ecosystem.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And back in the day, even before 12 years ago, before I started, I want to say it was around like 04 or 05 when it actually really started. And believe it or not, back in that time, people were actually doing video podcasting, which I couldn't imagine the transfer rates. And as far as like, I think of like a person, I make videos now on YouTube, and like, I just look at it like, okay, this is something cool. It's something fun to do. And I don't even think about storage and all that. But back then, like just getting a 250 gigabyte hard drive was like almost $200.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And the average video, Amanda, that I export and upload to YouTube right now is anywhere from 5 to 10 gigabytes. So you could imagine how fast that would fill up. But then again, I'm doing 4K video. Back then they were probably doing 720 or 480p at best. But still, and then to upload that, I mean, they would have had to have like the Mac Daddy internet. Otherwise, that thing is going to be uploading all freaking night. And by the time you wake up, it's still not ready to go. So I couldn't imagine that whole world. I just remember kind of being like early on and like listening to a few podcasts, but I really didn't get it. It wasn't until 07, 08 where I started to realize, okay, this is a real thing.
Man.
And there's your history of podcasting today.
I love it. That was a good lesson. No, that was really good. Not at all anything that I thought we were going to talk about. That's perfect.
Well, we kind of talk about a little bit of everything here. I'm slowly like figuring this thing out. 2 years into this podcast, I'm starting to figure it out. It's like when I first started bringing people on, it was like, okay, let's talk about the weight loss journey. Let's learn about, and these are all key things because this is what brings us together. And I never lose sight of that. But I look at the podcast that I had last week, and I'm talking in the future tense because it hasn't aired yet right to this day, but you'll be hearing about it in the next couple of days. But I think about the podcast that I did with Megan and James last week, we were all over the place. And there was the health, there was the weight loss, but there was also this like spontaneity, this kind of like interests, things that we were interested in, and kind of going off on sidebars. And I in my opinion, and again, I haven't got any complaints yet, but in my opinion, I think that really brings out the best conversation. It's like, yes, we have a purpose of why we're jumping on the call and what we're going to talk about. But I really feel like if we're going to talk for the first freaking time, we got to figure each other out a little bit. I can't just be like,
for sure.
I can't be like, yo, Amanda, what's going on? So tell me about that time where, you started losing weight. Like you just can't go there like right out of the gate. Like we got to learn about each other. We got to figure it out. So
it just makes it so much more organic.
Yes. I agree. I think I did a podcast. I don't remember who it was with, but we did like over a half an hour. We didn't even get to the weight loss stuff yet. It was like 35, 40 minutes in. We finally started talking about the journey, quote unquote.
I love that.
And I was all about it because I was just like, we go on Instagram every day and we're liking each other's photos. We're commenting, we're DMing. We get an insight on a person through photos and through the text that they put on their captions. And that's why I think captions are super important. And it's just unfortunate that not everybody reads them all the time because we're just so fast scrolling. But that's what I love about this format right here, because we just jump on and we just start talking. And so for the listener that either knows about you already, maybe they already follow you, and I think a great deal of them do, but then also people that may not, they're getting to really learn about you. They're getting to hear your voice, the context, they're getting a better feeling other than, oh, here's that cool girl in a photo, that's hanging out with her dogs or her husband or whatever. Like, that's what we see, but now here we get to hear the personality a little bit.
It just adds another dimension. You just become more of a 3-dimensional human instead of just something that's flat, Yeah.
And that's, I always say, number one, the captions are important, but also, if you can do like the videos or something like that and just show people more of the personality. And that's what I try to do. I haven't done a lot of it lately because I took a little bit of a break, but I'm slowly easing back in. You just saw a story that I posted. It's like, okay, now if somebody's jumping onto my page for the first time, they're going to see a bunch of pictures. But now if they go in like a story, they can see like, okay, here's how he talks. Here's what the vibe I'm getting. And so you at least develop something. You have an understanding.
And it's so fascinating too, how just being involved in this kind of group and this kind of community can really boost your self-esteem to do stuff like that. Like,
oh yeah.
Before I wouldn't do a video. You wouldn't hear my voice. That's just not. And I think part of it is growing up and being a fat person, you strive to be invisible and to blend into the background, and you don't want people to see you. You don't want them to notice you.
Yeah.
So you just spend your life just hiding. And when I first really got into Instagram and I met Daryl and started talking with him, he just sent videos and voice text all the time. And I felt so lame because the only thing that I would do was type back. I'm like, I'm not talking to you. Like, I'm not sending you a video. I'm not doing a voice thing.
It's like, who is this
weird.
guy?
Right. I'm like, why don't you type? What's wrong with you?
Daryl's a different case though. I mean, and this is now the weekly Daryl mention, but
yeah, I know.
I love the guy. I love him to death, but that he's just a different kind of animal right there with, just coming straight out of the gate with some video.
Yes.
I love his passion though. Like, it's unmatched. Like, I don't care. Phenomenal. It's unmatched.
Yep. Agreed. 100%.
And I mean, when he and I first started talking, and granted I'm a dude, so it's going to be a little bit different, but it's just like, like he just like starts sending videos, and like, I was like, all right, cool. We're going to go here then. All right, great. And then we just started chatting about like pop culture and Star Wars and all kinds of stuff. But like, I can imagine like, you're like, who the hell is this guy that's just like sending me videos?
Right. Yeah, it was. And it got to the point where I eventually just started feeling guilty that I wasn't videoing back. And then he would send videos. So there was a lot of information and it was too much to type. And I'm like, all right, forget it. You're getting a video. And I don't know what this is going to be like. I remember the first few videos, I'm just like staring into my phone and I'm just like, this is so wrong. I know this is not good.
I can only imagine how many people that he's probably made feel more comfortable with video. I mean, I think that's
100%.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's and so I mean, we're already in Instagram, so we might as well just keep on rolling with the Instagram. Like, was he the first guy that like brought you into the weight loss space or what?
Yes, I found Daryl at a really kind of pivotal moment for me. I was swimming around just feeling really lost with everything that I was doing. I was on a great path as far as my personal goals and where I wanted to be and what I was doing, but I was kind of leveling off, and I was so afraid of getting to a point where I was going to become complacent and I was going to just stop pushing myself as hard.
Right.
And I was just desperate for a community and for friends and for people to talk to and to relate to. And that's all I wanted. I'm just like, I just want people who understand where I'm at, what's going on, and, people who may need help or may need support. Like, that's just what I needed. And I had tried like joining Weight Watchers, and the only time I could go to meetings, it was all these really sweet old ladies who are wonderful and perfect and beautiful just the way they are, but not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I remember hearing him on one of your podcasts, going and looking further into him and checking out his Instagram and seeing that he literally lived 20 minutes from me.
Isn't that crazy?
And I'm like, what is happening? And I did. I reached out to him, and I am pretty sure that he was like, this girl is certifiable. Like, I don't know what's wrong with her. I was just like, I'm like, please help me. Like, I'm in my 30s and I have no idea how to talk to people or how to make friends. I just need help. And that's exactly what he's done.
Yeah, that's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah.
I know that I go back to, being very introverted, and even now to a certain degree, it's just like there are times where I won't really like type anything to people unless they come to me, because like I just feel like, oh God, am I bugging them? Like I don't want to bug anybody.
For sure.
Right?
Yep. Yes.
And then on their hand, they're probably like, who the hell is this guy? Like he never calls, he never writes, and I'm just like, I don't want to bug anybody.
Right.
Oh
yes.
It's a hard road to walk.
Yeah, it is. But I think it helps, because I feel like introverts really kind of gravitate towards each other because they get it.
Yeah.
Like I get it. We'll talk, we'll hang out, but afterwards I'm going to need some time. I need some space. I need to just not for a little while.
Yep.
And then we'll pick it back up,
I know that going to the Flying Pig, that was like definitely, while it was fun, it was also difficult at a certain degree, because there's all these people, and a lot of people I'm meeting for the very first time. And I mean, I'm happy. I mean, if you go back and look at the YouTube videos, like I'm thrilled to be there. I'm so happy to be there. But at the same time, inside, like there's so much anxiety, because I'm just like, oh my God, like, people see the pictures, they read my message or they hear the podcast, but like, what if they meet me and I don't live up to whatever they thought of, whatever thing they had in their mind of me.
Right. Yeah. It's a big, there's a big buildup to something like that.
Oh yeah.
And there's that fear of letting anybody down is enough to really mess with your head in any aspect of your life, Yeah,
and we're going to go do it again next year.
I can't friggin' wait. I'm like, it was so like, I think my timing with everybody, I was just like a couple of weeks off. Like, I feel like if I had reached out and started talking just a little bit earlier, it would have been completely different. Cause I just remember I was at the Flying Pig. I knew that a whole bunch of you guys were going to be getting together.
Yeah.
I was trying so hard to kind of inject myself.
Oh yeah.
Into it. And it just didn't work out.
But
I remember.
I'm sorry. I bet to like a certain point though, you feel like, like, oh, I don't want to impose. I don't want to, like, I know that's how I feel in those situations.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it was one of those things, like I desperately just wanted to be included, but I wanted to be included again, organically. I didn't want to be that weird person who was like, hey, you don't know me at all because I just talked to you for the first time 2 days ago, but hey, I'm here and let's be friends. It was just like, it just wasn't meant to be that way. And
you're all in.
I remember
now.
Oh, thank God. I was at the starting line to the 5K, because that's the race that I did.
Right.
And I mean, it's so funny to think back now. I probably saw every single one of you guys.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
Saw you. But I remember I was there. I was at the 5K. I was alone. I was by myself. I didn't have any friends who were doing it. I didn't have anybody with me. And the energy was so amazing and it was so inspiring. But I just remember just this like aching loneliness of where is my space?
Yeah.
And not really knowing if that's where it was. And I think since then it's just kind of this process that I'm going through of learning how to find my own happiness and not to rely on other people to bring it to me, and to take pride in being able to do things on my own and not needing, to have a whole circle of people. So it's been a process.
Well, it can definitely be difficult too, because like as you're trying to find that place, you see others around you that are doing whatever else. I mean, like, like seeing the people at the race or whatever, like you see that stuff. And it can be difficult because you want to be in, but at the same time you want to find your own stuff. But while you're finding your own stuff, like you don't know necessarily how to find it. It takes sometimes too long to find it in our minds, and we're just like, what do we do? We just feel lost.
Right. Yeah. And it's like if somebody told me back in my early 20s that I was still going to be feeling this way in my mid 30s, I'm like, oh my God, really? But
yeah, leaving social media for 30 days, that was a real wake-up call. I'll tell you what, that was tough.
I'm sure. Did you have a lot of people who reached out to you?
I did have I did have a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool. That was I was like, wow, that's really cool to hear from people. When I came back, I heard from even more. I think there were probably even some people that didn't even know that I was gone, but I didn't make a big production out of it. It was just, I'll be right back. I mean,
it was perfect the way you did it. Yeah.
I made a little tease video, but it wasn't, I didn't want to make a big speech like, hey, I'm leaving. It was more like an experiment. I look at it.
Right.
Like what happens if?
Right. Right. Yeah. And it was really fascinating to watch the way you left, and then to watch the way that you came back. It was so beautifully done. It was fantastic.
That video took like probably an hour or something to make that video.
It was what, like a minute?
Yeah, at that. I mean, and I'm talking about like just an hour in the filming of it, and then another like close to an hour like editing it all together, because this is my world now. Like making videos is what makes me happy. And so doing that video, I was like, it's a little over the top. I'm sure a few people will roll their eyes, whatever. Like I'm doing this just kind of like tongue in cheek. It's fun.
Right.
Hey, did I miss anything? And wink, wink, and walk off the frame. So I had fun making the video. It was just me trying to be a little bit more creative. But in that month that I was gone, like it was just so weird because, we wake up every day where, our instinct is to jump on the phone. Even if we're not getting on social media, the instinct of getting on the phone is there because maybe there's an email, maybe we're paying bills, maybe we're texting, whatever it is.
Right.
And so having that urge to get on social media and it not being there because the apps are gone, I was like, holy crap. And then, I found myself being more productive. I found myself going out even more and doing more things. And I remember I was at the Warped Tour the last 2 days of my break, and we met up with Lexi and Danny, and they're like, I don't know how you do it. Like you're out of your mind. And I'm like, I know. Right. This is the hardest thing that I've done. And it sounds so stupid because it's like, oh, you can't go without. It's just like,
so it was still that hard for you that far into it?
It was, because I wanted to know what my friends were doing.
Gotcha.
Like I wanted to know what, I wanted to like be able to catch up. And I heard from people, but like, they're not sending me like photo updates like they would on Instagram to post into their feed. So I feel like I'm out of the loop a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Yeah, and it's like now I can't imagine a time without, the community. And I'm always forever grateful for, getting involved and meeting people in the community.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. And that's why, things like the Flying Pig, I just look forward to those things because it's like, all right, everybody's going to come together. We're all going to meet up. It's going to be a lot of fun. And now you'll be there.
Yeah. I'm so excited. It's just, yes, thank God. It's such a great, wonderful, phenomenal group of people.
Oh yeah.
It's just, it's so crazy how you can have that many great people all together.
Speaking of the community, a couple of weeks ago, or probably a month or so now, we had a gentleman on this podcast by the name of Christopher Dunn. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He was on this podcast.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
You guys are in an elite club now, I'll have you know, because the only other group that are, significant other spouses that have been on this podcast are Kaitlyn and Jesse. And so you guys now join that elite club of couples that have appeared on the show.
Well, as soon as I heard your podcast with Jesse and I heard you say that, I was like, oh, well, come on, we got to do it too. So
I don't have a fancy like coffee mug or a jacket or a gold watch or anything like that, but just this virtual.
The kudos are good enough. Yeah, the kudos are good enough. We'll take it.
What did you think of that podcast? Because I got to ask, because that's the first thing I asked Jesse when we talked about Kaitlyn being on the podcast. It's like, okay, now we have the spouse on, so let's ask them what they thought of their significant other on the podcast.
Yeah, so Christopher is a natural born storyteller.
Yes.
I mean, he could spin anything into any kind of story that he wanted to and make it something that people wanted to hear.
Oh, definitely. He could read the phone book to me and I would be riveted.
For sure. Yeah. So he's got the voice for it, and he's just got this way. He's got this imagination that takes things and runs with it. And when he finds something that he's passionate about and that he believes in, he wants to talk about it and he wants to tell people about it. And I am eternally grateful that there are other people out there who will also listen to his stories.
You got the benefit of hearing that voice every day. It's like, hey, honey, I'm on my way home. I'm just like, wow, you get to hear that voice every day.
I know. It's one of the stories, like when we first started talking and hanging out.
Yeah.
I remember I was at the mall with a bunch of my girlfriends and I was like, you've got to listen to this guy's voice that I'm talking to. And he had left me a voicemail, and we're walking through the mall and I'm just playing this voicemail for them. And I'm like, yeah. And it's, he gets it all the time, and he's incredibly humble about it.
Yeah.
And he knows that he's very lucky, and he doesn't take it for granted.
Definitely.
He, my boss's daughter got married, and they didn't have anybody to really like MC the reception or anything like that. So he donated his time and he did that, and he had a blast, and it was the perfect atmosphere for him,
Oh yeah.
So he definitely has a gift when it comes to his voice and his storytelling. And I am excited for him to see where he's able to take it.
Oh, definitely. And he's got great looks too. I mean, I don't want to like completely fanboy out over here, but he's got good looks too. So if you got the voice, right? And that, I mean, you're going to catch people with the voice. Then you got the looks, like you're going to be on fire here. This guy's going to be printing money here soon.
I know. He's pretty much the whole package. So,
so you're listening to this podcast, and anything you want to call him out about? Anything he got wrong or anything?
No.
Oh, we gotta stir the pot a little bit. Come on, no, I'm kidding.
Oh my God, no. He did pretty well.
Okay.
He did pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I had a great chat with him. That was I was actually finishing up around a podcast around the week that we talked. I was trying to get everything finished before I went on vacation and before I went on my hiatus, because I was like, oh my God, like how am I going to book people to be on the show if I'm gone? Like it's going to be impossible.
Right.
And then I remember talking with Daryl, and he's like, "Oh, well, I'll be your guy. I'll book some interviews for you."
Yeah.
And he had mentioned
everybody's got to have a bookie. So
yeah, he had mentioned to me that you wanted to come on, and then we talked, and I was like, "Yeah, we gotta make it happen." So Cincinnati, is that a place you've been all your life, or?
No, I grew up in Western New York.
Okay, that's right. You did mention something about New York before.
Yeah.
So you grew up there. When do you go to Cincinnati? How far into your life is that?
Whoa, man. Before we went from Western New York down to Atlanta and lived in Atlanta for about 6 months. Yeah. Oh, it was phenomenal.
No kidding.
I hated the traffic, but everything else about Atlanta was perfect.
That's Southern cooking, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm telling you. And then we wound up, well, I was there for about 6 months. Christopher was in Atlanta for about 6 weeks before his job relocated him up to the Cincinnati area.
Where did you guys meet? Was it Atlanta?
No, we met we grew up about a mile away from each other. We didn't meet until we were adults.
Okay.
But we shared the same neighborhood. We shared some of the same friends. But we didn't meet each other. I was 20 and he was 18 when we finally actually met each other. So
wow. I mean, when you talk about having a history like that, it's like, man, when you guys are reminiscing about the old times, you guys are literally talking about the same stuff. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Right. So we grew up he went to private schools and I did more of the public schools, which, I mean, if it wasn't for that, I know we would have crossed paths sooner.
Right.
But it was for the best, because especially in high school, we wouldn't have liked each other. So
why do you think that is?
I was the studious book nerd type and he was the Playboy jock type. So it just wasn't a good combination.
Yeah, and that's the thing in school too. It's like, I've hung out with people outside of school, like after, years after, and it's like, the people that you are in high school are vastly different, I think, for a lot of people, because you're trying to fit in, you're trying to find your space or your niche or whatever in high school. You want to fit in. And so sometimes these things are very, very different from, other people. But whereas you may become friends somehow and then you see each other outside of school and it's like a totally different world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in high school and middle school, I was tormented. Like, I was bullied something fierce by a lot of people.
Really?
And, oh my God. So once you leave high school and then you're in college and then Facebook comes along and you just naturally want to connect with people because you see names that you know.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And some of the people who were just mean are some of the most delightful human beings in the entire world now.
It's so true.
And it's one of those things that you just can't hold stuff like that over people's heads forever, because you're kids, and who you are when you're 15, 16, 17 years old is not necessarily going to be who you are when you're 27, 28, into your 30s and so on.
Oh, 100%. I mean, so, we kind of opened up the podcast. I was telling you a story about the girl that wrote the phone number on the piece of paper. There was a guy in high school that I think she had dated before we started talking. And if you're outside looking into the high school, you would look at this guy and think like stereotypical quote unquote geek, right? Like he likes Star Trek and he's really tall and lanky and high water jeans and all that. Right. So,
yes.
This is a guy that in high school I was picking on to a certain degree. Number one, because I was the next guy after him. And number two, because, he really didn't fight anybody. He was always a very, very nice guy. But me, who was also insecure about my weight, because I got, bullied a lot for my weight. I was, to try to, as they would say in the professional wrestling business, get my heat back, which means kind of get the comeuppance or kind of get even. Right. So I would, pick on this guy and, we just said like horrible stuff about each other. But the quick ending to this was, so about, let's see, I graduated in 2000 and 2010, or maybe it was 2009, one of the two. I remember running into him at a bar in the area, and I seen him and I said, I was like, hey, Will, his name was Will. He's like, Gary, yeah, I remember you. He's like, yeah, we really didn't like each other, did we? And I shook his hand and I was like, dude, I just want to say I'm so sorry. And then so from there on, like, we were totally cool. Now we're not like the best of friends. Like, I would say it's more acquaintances. Once in a while you pop in a Facebook message, what's up? But like it's just, the person you are in high school generally is going to be vastly different from the person you are outside of school.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah.
And why were you getting bullied? Was it a weight thing, or was it like the bookwormy kind of thing, or what was it for?
Oh, it was all of it. It was all of it. I mean, you want to talk about somebody with the odds stacked against them. It was like it was the braces, and it was the being overweight, and it was being introverted, and it was being studious, and it was being just quirky.
Yeah.
And not really fitting in with anybody. I went to an inner city school, so I was a minority, and it was just awkward and very uncomfortable. And you want to talk about putting things into perspective, you know, in that kind of regard to the state of schools and things. That is like a whole different topic, but
yeah,
you know, but it was just everything was stacked against me as far as cool points, you know. It just wasn't there. I never was the kind of person who went out to socialize. I didn't go out to parties. I never experimented with drinking or smoking or any of that stuff. I just wasn't cool.
Yeah. People fear what they don't know, by the way. I mean, people, they, you know, because, deep down they actually fear it. So, you know, if they have that kind of personality, they're going to project it back on in a negative, type mentality. They're going to come at you, swinging either verbally or sometimes physically.
Correct. Yeah. And it was, so, I mean, it was fine because I had a small group of really close friends. I was never really isolated. I was never alone. I was not a depressed teenager by any stretch of the imagination. It just was one of those things that, I will probably never go to one of my high school reunions. I just don't have a desire to go back and be with that whole group of people. I don't look back on high school and say, oh man, those were amazing times. I don't.
I'd roll in there and I'd be like, look at me now, fool.
Yeah.
You wish you could be my friend.
I don't know. I don't really know if I'm quite there with the confidence game. Maybe for the, what are we doing? What are we doing this year? Is this my 20th anniversary?
What year did you graduate?
Oh my God. No, it's 15. I graduated in 2004.
Okay. Yeah, I was 2000.
Yeah, so maybe for the 20th anniversary, I'll be feeling a little bit more saucy. So we'll see.
Yeah, damn right. You better get up in there and tell them what they're missing. Like, hey, we need to be friends. You hit me up on the gram. Man. I'm known over there.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah, I remember, I haven't been to any reunions yet, but I think that's more that my class, nobody's really gotten together to organize them, which is so weird. Like back in the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, like all this stuff, like these people, like it seems like they're a lot more oriented, better organized with that stuff. And like, like my mom goes to reunions, and it's like now, us younger people, like we just don't give a crap. Like we're just like, who the hell needs a reunion anyway?
I don't even know if it's so much that you don't give a crap, but it's like, well, I don't need it because I'm friends with everybody on social media. I know what you're doing. Like, I know what you look like. I know what your spouse looks like. I know you've got kids. I know you've got a house. I know where you live.
There's no mystery.
Like, I don't really need to travel all the way back to New York to see it because I can just sit on my phone and take a peek.
That's something I never really thought of. I mean, I've had similar thoughts, but like I never thought it in the way that you just said it so perfectly. It's like, the social media, it like takes away that kind of need to, and I think that's why people, tend to not keep in touch or as far as like, face to face and things like that. I'm hoping to change that with this podcast. Like I want to start traveling the country and meeting people face to face to do these things. But I think like,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think social media to a certain degree has kind of put a shield over us. We put this wall around a little bit. It's like this protective, almost like a cubicle in an office, and we put it around, and it's like, you need to talk a lot before you come in this space. Like, I don't know how I feel about you or something like,
right.
I think social media has kind of built that. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. And I think I know it didn't start that way. Like,
yeah,
back when like AOL first came out and like there was AOL chat rooms and stuff like that, you you talk to anybody. Here's my phone number. Here's my address.
Yeah. ASL.
Right. Exactly. And but as things have progressed and times have gotten I don't even know if things are scarier. It's just that you hear more. I think people are just a little bit more guarded and a little bit more protective, which I understand, but it's also sad.
Oh yeah. Cause I think, there's a lot more information out there now. So we hear about these things like, oh, somebody got, gunned down or somebody got, jumped and then so we fear like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to me. Like I can't just start talking to strangers, face to face. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from because we hear so much more information now, married that together with the fact that we're on social media. There's no more real mystery to people. And so we just don't feel the need to hang out, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think part of it too could, something that you might bump up against too, doing that is not so much like the barrier that people put up, but just the fact that they have this persona and they don't want it to crumble. Like they don't want who they really are to be portrayed anywhere. I mean, cause there's only so much that you can hide when you're having an actual in-person or over the phone conversation. You can hide anything in the world when you're just posting little snippets on social media. But when it comes to having conversations like this, there's only so far that you can go.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's definitely, I can relate with that. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that may, like Photoshop photos or, kind of like alter, what is put out there. I remember when I started doing this podcast, when I started sharing my journey, it's like, all right, no more BS. Like it's all out there. Like, you listen to any old podcast. I don't know how far back you went, but like, there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I used to be a really terrible person, or at least that was what I thought of myself. And it's like, man, I used to, just all kinds of things. Like this is the person I used to get angry all the time. I used to shut people out, like blah, blah, blah. Like, I never ran from that stuff. I just put it out there, just started talking about it. And I started sharing more because I just felt comfortable with putting it all out there, because once it's all out there, you take the bullet out of the gun of the quote unquote haters or trolls and things like that,
Right. Yeah. They don't have anything to throw back at you because it's there.
Exactly. And that's why I think that, sharing your journey, and I get it, there's a lot of people that don't want to share so many things. And I think it's on a case by case basis personally.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
yeah.
But, so high school, you're getting bullied. Was it all just like, verbal abuse, or did you ever have to, scrap with anybody, or what was that like?
No. Oh no. I think it was easy for people to bully me because I was so unconfrontational. Like I took it. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll be your doormat. If you need to beat on me, that's fine. I don't, I didn't have the confidence to speak up or anything. And I never actually got into like any kind of a physical altercation, but I remember so clearly, I was walking home. This was in elementary school. I was walking home from elementary school, and there was this kid in my class, and his name was Vincent.
Right.
And he came up behind me and whacked me across the back with a 2x4.
Good God.
And it was just one of those, like, I don't remember anything before it. I don't remember anything after it. I just remember that happening and saying, oh, this is how people treat me,
That's just insane though.
Isn't it? And it's just like, it's one of those things that as you grow, I mean, you don't have the capacity as a kid to reflect on something like that. But as you get older and you start, thinking about things, it's like, okay, well, how much of my life and what I'm doing is directly related to the fact that I believe that is how people are going to treat me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, these people that are out there bullying, I think, sometimes they need a good slap across the head or something. Cause I'll tell you, that's what woke me up. I want to say this was my senior year, or it was either my junior or senior year. And there was this guy, who was very quiet. He was, a bookworm kind of guy. I guess that's whatever you would label them as back then. And I just remember talking with a couple of people, like looking at him and laughing and kind of pointing fun. And one guy says, I dare you to go over there and knocked the book out of his hand because he's just sitting there waiting for his bus. He's reading his book. And I said, all right, well, screw it. What's he going to do about it? Right.
Right.
I knocked that book out and he jumps up, grabs me by the throat and pushes me into the wall.
Whoa.
And that learned me because I blacked out.
Yeah.
I got hit against the wall so hard that I blacked out for a moment. And, I'm coming to those guys that I was talking to, they were gone. They got the hell out. I was, I had to have there was like a teacher that revived me. It was like, hey, what happened? And I'm like, I don't even remember what happened.
Oh my God.
And luckily I ran into that guy when I was working for CVS probably about 2 years later. And I just got a chance to shake his hand and make amends. I was like, dude, I'm really, really sorry for the way that I acted. And so,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I don't really like to advocate violence of any kind, but at the same time, it's like, if you're going to be a bully, sometimes you just need like one good, hit to like wake you up, I think.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, you're not scared straight any other way. Like, if somebody could talk to you, but like, you see these shows like Maury shows or whatever, where like these kids, they just yell back at whoever's trying to talk them straight. And like, sometimes they need that, that other kind of wake up call, I guess.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like we don't have kids. We don't plan on having kids. And it's a big part of it is because I don't want to have to be responsible for raising a kid in that kind of environment. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's, geez.
I don't know what kids deal with now, but I mean, I would hope that it's gotten better. I could be wrong on that, but I hope that it's gotten better.
Man. And see, I think I'm like, it's gotta be worse because at least like back when I was younger, when I left school, that's it. It was over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I mean, it follows kids everywhere. And
social media.
Yep. And like even back like because you and I are close in age. You said you graduated in 2000.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we're close in age. So I mean, even back when you had like AOL, if you didn't want to talk to somebody,
just turn it off.
You just block them, or you didn't even have to engage. Like they couldn't search for you.
Yes.
Like it just. That's just not the way it worked. And you had like your screen names that you hid behind and you hid behind them really well. And there weren't photos that went along with it. Whereas like now on Instagram, if you're just scrolling through their friend list, you'd be like, oh, I know that person. I recognize that face.
Oh yeah.
And you can find anybody. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I hope that it's, I hope that it's, that it's gotten that maybe people maybe it's not fully improved, but maybe people have a better understanding at least or something. Like, I hope that it's progressed somewhat, but I understand that, now with the communication devices that we have now, it's just like anybody can get out there and just, just be hating and it's unfortunate for sure.
It is. Yeah, it really is.
So let's talk. I mean, my God, would you believe we've done like an hour already? We haven't even got to your journey yet.
Oh my God.
So we should probably transition into that world now. But I'm riveted by the conversation. I can definitely tell this will not be the only time we do a podcast. 1,000%.
I would love that. Yeah.
But we got to get the journey in there. So I mean, let's talk about it. Where does the health start to go wrong for you? What age? What's kind of going on? What's happening around that time?
Yeah. So I know, like looking back at like childhood photos, it was probably like around third grade. I see a picture and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of Amanda when things started to go a little bad for you. And, but it wasn't one of those things like I was raised as an only child. I had both of my parents, we had two incomes. It wasn't like there was any type of poverty issue. It wasn't like I was abused or tormented. I wasn't depressed. Like I literally, like there's zero excuses. Like there's not a traumatic event that I can look back and say, that's when it happened.
Yep.
It was just that. And probably the best thing I can say is that my father is Italian. And I think a lot of Italians tend to love you with food.
Oh, hell yeah. That's what I hear.
Yeah, that's, and that's exactly what it was. Like we had dinner every single night and you always had a protein source and a super heavy carb and a canned vegetable. Like that was dinner, and there was always dessert afterwards. And it was just, neither one of my parents were healthy. Like, they both smoked. Neither one of them were particularly active. Neither one of them were obese.
Sure.
But it just was never a thing. And I know, like, I've heard, people talk and tell their stories about how, like, going to the doctor's office and being told as kids that they were fat. And I don't even remember going to the doctor as a kid. Like, it just, like, health was so low on the priority list that I didn't even have a primary care doctor until, like, we moved to Cincinnati. Like, I don't know who my doctor was growing up,
I'm still slacking on that. I need to get to that.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's just one of those. And I feel like when you grow up and it's not a priority for you as a kid, it's even harder to make it a priority for yourself as an adult.
100%.
So yeah, and then Christopher and I met, and of course, as with just about every new relationship, the new relationship comfort settles in, and you go out to eat all the time.
Oh yeah.
So, and that lasted for the two of us for 13 years, So, and it was in December of 2017, and Christopher had decided that he was done. He didn't want to be on his medications anymore. He was over it. And he made a decision to do what he needed to do for himself.
Right.
And
where were you at on that? Where
I was in my mind, I was being supportive, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Great. Whatever you need me to do. But subconsciously, I was sabotaging him. Like, I was buying things that weren't going to be helpful for him. I just wasn't actually being supportive.
Really?
And yeah. And I didn't even realize that I wasn't being supportive. It was just one of those things that I don't
It was
know.
Like subconsciously. It wasn't like you were like maliciously like, yeah, that dude thinks he's going to get healthy. We'll see about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. But it was just like I went to Costco, and I was like, oh my God, look at these. They were like the little, like, single serving, like, Pringles cans. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to get the single serving Pringles can, because then at least he's not going to open the whole can and eat all of them.
Right.
He'll just have like a single, you know what I mean? Like, so in my mind, I was like, well, this makes sense and this is good.
Sure.
And he called me out on it, and he said, he told me, you are not ready to change. Maybe you can't change this. Maybe this just isn't the path for you. Maybe health isn't something that you're going to do.
Yep.
And I am an incredibly competitive person, and all I heard was, you can't do that. And I said, watch me. So
damn right.
So it really was. It was a good swift kick in the ass that I needed.
Right. And where's the high point for you? Like, where are you at this point? Like, how heavy?
My highest weight that I know was 285.
Okay. That's about where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and fortunately, I suppose, I've never been somebody who I've never this is my first time. Like, this weight loss, this is my first go at it.
Right.
So I don't have the capacity to really understand what it's like for people who do go up and down, because I know that's a whole other side to it that is incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Well, you've done a hell of a job thus far. I will say that.
Yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, I'm pretty damn excited.
I would be.
Down, yeah. So I'm down 90 pounds, which is amazing. And I never
virtual fist bump. Boom. Put it up. Yeah. There it is. There it is.
It's like, it's one of those things that I didn't think that I would ever get where I am.
Sure.
Let alone love it so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta tell yourself all the good stuff, and
oh my gosh,
the positive reinforcement. Because if you don't, like, other people will say stuff, but like, you don't know what, if they really, where they're really coming from with that. So like, internally, that's why I say love yourself, and why it's so important. And it's not some ego thing. It's just, man, I need to love myself in order to survive. Because if I don't love myself, like, it's game over.
Right, and it's one of those things that you cannot rely on weight loss to bring you happiness. That's not the way it works. It doesn't happen that way. You have got to find your own happiness outside of that.
Yeah, you got to get that mental stability.
Yeah, once you do, things will start to fall into place. But it's the mental game behind all of it is something they don't tell you about it. They don't warn you about it.
No, they don't tell you nothing. It's all a numbers game. I mean, look, the first year that I did this, the one that's actually the path I'm on right now, like, you know, it was all numbers, like road to 100 pounds lost. And I mean, I got there, but like, that's all it was. And it's like, you know, it doesn't help when everybody that like knows you're into it. Like the first question is, how much weight have you lost? How much weight have you lost? Right. It's like, not like, hey, how's your mental stability? You know, are you happy where you're at? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel good? Like they don't ask any of that. It's how much weight have you lost? It drives me nuts.
Right. Right. And it just further perpetuates that obsession that people have with the scale and the numbers and so much of what I just want people to know is it just doesn't matter at the end of the day. It just doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you're making good choices for yourself, if you're being healthy, if you're being active, if you're moving, if you're nourishing yourself with good foods, you'll be okay.
Oh yeah.
Regardless of what that number is on the scale, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Cause it's going to go up and down. It doesn't, I mean, you know, everybody is different. I mean, yes, there are people that, you know, will lose it a lot faster than others. And because we have that constant, you know, comparison syndrome where we've got to scroll through and, well, gee, God, you know, this other guy right here, man, good Lord, he lost 180 pounds in 5 months. Okay. That's not even realistic. Like I just made that up, but like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's ridiculous.
And it's unfortunate because I feel like people let that dampen their spirits with their own success and what they've done. And I'm just like, just sit there and reflect on where you were and where you are and just be freaking proud of yourself, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we give ourselves nearly enough credit in life. I just think that we think the worst of ourselves, or you have at the other end where like you have like the big egomaniacs that think that like there's nothing beating them. But like generally, I think most of us look at it like, oh God, we're terrible. Ugh, we suck.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
and it's hard, especially like me. I'm like so far the other end of the spectrum. I'm just like, I'm great and you're great. Everybody is great. Everyone can do anything that they want to do.
Yes.
And it's like, and when people come to me with negativity, it's just like, you know, let's put a squash in that right now, because this space, this conversation that you and I are having, there's no space for negative talk. Like that's not, like, I'm not going to perpetuate that. I'm not going to encourage anybody to talk negatively about themselves.
Well, I think more importantly, Amanda, I don't even know if I'm waking up tomorrow. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow. Like, why would I waste precious time that I have on this earth to be hateful or upset with people? Like, why in the world would I even do that?
Especially to yourself.
Yes.
You know, like,
yes,
you know, go out there, find something that makes you happy. Find joy in something every day. Give yourself a reason to smile. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you.
It ain't gonna happen.
You'll wait forever. You're gonna wait forever. Go out there and make your own happiness, and you'll be fine.
I love that. I think it's so well said. Few more things here. I mean, so like when did it start to like actually click? Like you start to make the moves. You know, how far, because, you know, you talked about, you know, Costco and the sabotaging, like when does that switch flip for you?
Well, it was just a lot of baby steps. It was just, you know, I didn't even start doing any type of movement or exercise or anything until after, I think, the first 6 months or so. When I first started losing weight, I was finally in my last semester of college. So like I've just been a perpetual college student my entire adult life, but I was getting ready to graduate. I had so many other things on my plate and so many other things that I was dealing with, I knew that if I wasn't careful, whatever it was that I was going to do wouldn't stick.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So I was super fortunate in the beginning to recognize that and realize that.
Right.
And then, started slowly getting more and more active. And I did my first 5K on Thanksgiving, and have really, decided that I absolutely hate running, but I love the way I feel afterwards. So
ain't that the truth? Yeah.
Oh my God, it's the worst. I did a 5K Saturday evening. It was 91 degrees. Who runs when it's 91 degrees out?
Who the hell pays for the privilege to go running? That's what I try to tell myself, like from years ago. Like, try to picture that.
God. Yeah.
You're going to pay $30, $40, $50 to go running. What?
Yep. But I'm telling you though, I won't do a race anymore unless I get a medal at the end.
Hell yeah.
I'm like, there's no finisher's medal. No, I'm not going.
Those flying pig medals are pretty dope.
Yep. Yes.
I'm coming for 2 of them.
Yeah. Are you doing both of the races, right?
I'm doing the 5 and a 10 because I'm absolutely out of my mind. It's not for anything other than I'm clinically insane and I want 2 medals.
My plan is I'm just doing the 5K. So I'm going to run the 5K and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to help carry everybody else through the finish line who've decided to do both, because y'all are nuts.
Yes. Please be ready there with a towel and a bottle of water.
Yeah. Man.
I must be out of my mind, but
that's all right though.
Yeah. I'm like you, like I hate running. I absolutely hate it. I just sign up for these things because it's difficult.
Right. I like the challenge. I really do. I enjoy it. And I'm meeting starting tomorrow. Oh my God. I'm meeting with a personal trainer for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Terrified. I'm
I bet.
She's a professional bodybuilder.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, by the time this actually comes out, send help because I may not be okay. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to check in on you and make sure that you're still good. But I think that you're gonna crush it. I'm looking at the calendar, by the way, and people are listening to this July the 31st.
Okay. Oh, that's the day after I'm getting my under 200 pounds tattoo.
Well, there you go. That's perfect.
That'll be a good way to celebrate. I love that.
What an awesome tattoo you have there.
Yes. Thank
We're
you
talking
so
to
much.
future you here. Congratulations on your tattoo.
And perfect.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. So you're doing the running. Everything's clicking. You've lost over 90 pounds. I mean, this is just, my God, this is phenomenal.
It's been wonderful. And I know that I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the support of so many people, you know, people that I knew when I started, people that I know now. It's incredible to know at any given moment, if I'm feeling like I'm struggling or if I'm feeling like I'm stuck, I've got 100 people that I can reach out to.
Yeah. Right,
what an amazing feeling. Yeah. For somebody who never had that before. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh man. Well, speaking of the gram, tell people where they can get you, because if they're not already following you, they need to go right now.
Yeah. I am Mutts and Miles. Throw a couple of underscores in there to separate the words and you will find me.
Ah, that's easy. Yes. Go right over there. Follow her right now. I got to tell you, I feel like I could do easily another hour with you. Otherwise, if I did though, I would have a very angry wife waiting for dinner and stuff. So
yes.
She's probably listening in her car right now. I was like, yep. Shaking her head. Yes, I will kill you if you don't get your ass off the podcast and go get to some dinner. But I really enjoyed the chat. I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and we'll have to do it again. I mean, cause I feel like all the sidebars, there's a lot more cool stories in there somewhere.
Absolutely. And then maybe when we'll do something with Christopher and I when you're here for the Flying Pig.
Oh, bank on it. Cause I did tell Jesse and Kaitlyn that we're meeting up and doing a podcast. So just go ahead and just mark it down. It's already happening. Yes. We're going to do that.
How many people can we have on a single podcast before it's just too much?
Let's see. So I'm looking at my mixer right now and I've got 4 inputs. If I buy the little adapter, I can get 2 more, which would bring it to 6. So I could get 6 microphones plugged in at one time, 4 with what I have right now. I don't know when too much is too much, but I'm willing to try.
What you should do?
Yes.
You know what you should do? When we do the Flying Pig meetup and we have the big dinner where everybody is,
yes,
you should set up in a corner and invite everybody to come on and just ask them one question.
Just come on over to my corner.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that would be so much fun.
Well, you know what I love about this thing? I'll make this quick for people that aren't into tech stuff. No, you're fine. This is me where I go off on a tech tangent. So this little recorder is actually portable. And so one of the reasons why I got it in the first place is because it allows me to take it everywhere. I took it to Daryl. We sat down at La Rosa's and had, dinner, and we recorded a podcast. It was phenomenal. So what I could also do, and I may explore this, is I may be able to walk around the convention floor or whatever and just talk to people.
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome.
There's a radio guy, Opie. He used to be on a show, Opie and Anthony. He has
I know them.
Yeah. He has the same recorder that I have. And what I love is this guy would just walk around the streets of New York and talk to strangers.
Oh my God. Were they the people who did the Yeah Toast song?
I don't know about that. They were the ones that did Jocktober, where they would make fun of FM DJs who were like cornball.
I'm gonna have to Google, because man, I really feel like that was where I first. Okay, I'll figure it out. I'll let you know. They
definitely were doing their show based out of New York, so I'm sure you probably heard something there.
Yep. Oh my gosh, how funny.
Amanda, this has been an honor. Really, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Remember at the beginning of the show, I mentioned a little thing called Patreon? Well, I'd love to have you join me. But Gary, what is Patreon? It's a website that is helping small creators like me raise funds to further expand their creative visions. For as low as $1 a month, you can help me further my dream of reaching as many people as possible and eventually taking the show on the road to meet all these fine people face to face and add a video element to this podcast. If you were to donate $4 a month, you'd be hearing this show a few days earlier with no commercials and getting access to my close friends group on Instagram. Donate $10 a month and you get all that plus your name right at the beginning of the show alongside other producers. But act fast. That tier is limited to 10 people. I've got a whole lot more to offer, and you can get all the details over at patreon.com/Gary Cantrell. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for checking out the show, and I'll talk to you again really soon. HardWorkAlwaysWins.com. It's more than just a clothing line. It's my mantra. I speak it, I wear it, I live it, and I'd love to have you join the Hard Work Squad. We're constantly adding new items to the store, including our brand new Future-ish hats, which come in a variety of colors, including camo. I mean, who doesn't like camo? We also just put our famous Splash logo in gold to match our OG logo, and there's so much more here. You just got to check it out. Here's the best part. Use the code PODCAST at checkout to take 10% off of your very first order and join the Hard Work Squad today.